will be giving the foreword to the film Pray the Devil Back to Hell. My favorite person in the whole world is Emily Bell, who I actually studied abroad with in college. She graduated from BU, magna cum laude, majoring in public relations, international relations, and French. Now, actually I guess since then, she worked at Wardrobe for Opportunity for a while, and now she's the PR manager of public relations at More Than Me, which is an organization that builds schools for girls in Liberia, and she's going to tell you more about that now.
Woo! Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yes? Okay. Hi. Laurel is one of my favorite people too. I'm actually the marketing and development manager, but it was close. So I wanted to start with a video, so we're gonna start. Is the sound? The sound's not working. Oh, this?
Try again. Oh, does it not plug in?
That's a different one. This is plugged in. Hi. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I refuse to start until the video plays. Yeah.
My name is Regina of the More Than Me Academy. I come from the community of West Point. I'm the first female in my family to know how to read.
West Point is one of the most notorious slums in West Africa, one of the most notorious slums in the world. It's one of those places where you walk in and every single one of your senses is like attacked, in a good and bad way. More Than Me is an organization that helps little girls from West Point who are vulnerable of sexual exploitation get off the street and into school. We want, when they finish school, that they can decide what comes next for their own lives. So I wanted to start a school, but we're in the center of the capital and we're in the most congested area in the entire country, so there's just no space. I couldn't find a building. So then I was like, let me talk to the government officials. The president was like, all you need is a building. We've got tons of government buildings. They're all bombed out and looted, but you can have one. We got a partner here locally, a business company that came in and helped fix the building. There's a bigger message that I hope to really share, is really to challenge people. What are we living for, and who are we on a day-to-day basis? Living for something bigger than ourselves. And that doesn't mean always helping girls go to school. I mean, it's in the little moments.
Give them an education. That's what this project is all about. To expand Katie Mayer's initiative to as many communities as possible and get all those young girls in school learning to become good professionals.
Cool. Oh, I need to cancel. So, More Than Me, as you heard in the video, our mission is to make sure that education and opportunity rather than exploitation and poverty define the lives of the most vulnerable girls from the West Point slum in Liberia. So More Than Me beyond that, we've been evolving since we started in 2009. We've evolved to meet the needs of our community. So that's taken us from providing scholarships at a local school to starting our own school, to fighting Ebola in the West Point community, to now working to rebuild the education system in Liberia. And through all of that, we have used social media, which I think is a unique piece that a lot of nonprofits don't have. But we were birthed on MySpace, we won our first big grant on Facebook, and we fought Ebola using Instagram. So, I have a clicker. So I wanted to start a little bit with a little background on Katie's story, our founder. She was born in New Jersey, grew up on government assistance, a single mom, thought she was poor and got the short end of the stick. And then in high school, she had the opportunity to go to Haiti and realized that she actually wasn't poor, and there are a lot of people living in worse circumstances than she grew up in. And she learned that 88% of the world's population lives in developing countries, and it changed her worldview, and she realized what else was out there and that she wanted to really be able to make a difference in that sense. Also, 1 in 5 people don't have access to clean drinking water. So she ended up being the first person in her family to graduate from college, and her first job out of school was teaching adult literacy in Liberia. So when she found that out, she was like, Liberia, where's that? And she Googled it and saw that it was founded by freed American slaves, and there's this connection between the US and Liberia. The capital's Monrovia after James Monroe. There's states like Maryland and Virginia. They have a similar flag to us, and they had one of the most brutal civil wars in the world's history, which you guys will learn more about if you stick around for the movie. So she went to Liberia, a country of 4 million people. A third of the population around there lives in Monrovia, and within Monrovia there is a notorious slum called West Point, which you guys saw a little bit in the video. West Point, depending on where you get your sources from, there's between 75,000 and 150,000 people living there in really close quarters. And like Katie said, all your senses are attacked. It's like the Beauty and the Beast. You see the best of humanity and the worst of humanity. There'll be a wedding going on next to a person dying or needing help, and you can't hide anything. So not like in the suburbs here where if someone is sick, you don't find out till an ambulance comes to pick them up. But in places like West Point, you really can't hide anything. So people told her, don't go there. The saying is, nothing good comes out of West Point. So naturally, Katie wanted to check it out. And she went, and she's a big kid herself, started meeting kids like this girl, Abigail, who at the age of 11 was forced to become a prostitute, and she was actually giving oral sex for clean drinking water. And Katie was seeing things like this happen, like, this is totally unacceptable, I have to do something about it. She's like, if you could have anything in the world, what would you want? And they said, we just want to go to school. And she was like, school? I hated school, why do you want to go to school? But she was like, okay, so she started putting their stories on MySpace, and people started wiring her money, and she was like sponsoring these kids in school. And then a friend of hers, a lawyer friend, said, you should make this into your own organization. And she was scared that she wasn't enough, that she wasn't smart enough or pretty enough or educated enough or this enough. And finally, her best friend said, get over yourself, it's not about you. And she thought about that, played it over in her head, and that's where the name More Than Me came from. So we started sponsoring girls in school with scholarships at a local Liberian school, and quickly realized that the school was not sufficient. One day we walked in and saw a teacher watching pornography on her phone while the kids were napping. And things like this were happening every day, and like, we need our own school, this isn't okay. So Liberia is a unique place, and somehow or other, Katie gets to meet with President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. So she's there, and she's nervous. It's Nobel laureate, first female president in Africa, and she's like, Katie, I've heard of the good work you're doing, and I hear you need a building. Let me let me give you one. And we're like, okay, great. And then we get this building. And it's this bombed out, looted building. We're like, what are we gonna do with this? How are we gonna fix it up? So at that time, Facebook was now a thing, whereas MySpace was cool at the time when she started posting their stories. And Chase was doing this Facebook contest called the American Giving Awards, and they had 5 nonprofits of various sizes competing for $1 million prize. And we were the smallest organization, no staff, and with a grassroots effort, we actually did a campaign about that girl Abigail that I showed you, and people wrote "I am Abigail" on their foreheads and posted it, and it went viral, and everyone was voting, and we ended up winning $1 million. And that's when I was hired on, because there were no staff before that. So we won. We're the smallest organization. We won, and we fixed up the school. So this is the after picture. We opened the school for 124 students on September 7th, 2013. And in addition to education, we provided 2 meals a day, healthcare through a school clinic, psychosocial services, and an after-school program. We had a co-teaching program. One of our co-teachers is in the audience. And with American and Liberian teachers. And we learned a lot about running a school for a year. Some girls, we were seeing vast improvements. We were adding these services throughout the year to meet their needs. And we had all these plans to improve the school after first year, and then Ebola hit. So back in July of 2014, I was actually over in Liberia, and we were forced to shut down our school. And at that time, we were doing our summer program. So we got everything together that we could and gave them care packages to take home with them. We didn't know how long the school would be closed or what was really gonna happen, but this is a picture of us laying out the care packages in the library, and gave them workbooks and bags of rice and medicine and Ebola prevention materials and everything that we could think of to keep them busy and keep them at home so that they weren't at risk out in the community. So this is them lining up to get their things. There's Elvina, who's in the audience. So that was at the end of July. And then in August, Ebola was confirmed to be in West Point, and West Point started making international headlines. This not small, but this slum that no one normally hears about in West Point was making front page of Washington Post and New York Times. And we were all back in the States at this time, or Katie was back fundraising, and we saw this picture, and that arrow is pointing to Albernita, who's one of our students. And we were like, how is she at the front lines of this? This is not okay. It was really hard to get information, and Katie was like, I'm not a health worker, but I need to go back. I need to figure out what I can do to help. And we had one person say to us, if you can organize people, you will save lives. And that's really stuck with me, because there's a lot of other things in a disaster needed besides healthcare workers, and you'll see we were able to help. So Katie went back. Brussels Airlines gave us 12 bags, which is great. We took a bunch of supplies with us, and Katie gets back, and this is what she sees. And this is the busiest market in Liberia, and it was completely empty during the height of Ebola. So she gets in. West Point has been quarantined at this time. You guys can feel free to ask. I don't know how much you guys know from the news, but it was quarantined, and there was a lot of distrust between the people and the government, and they didn't believe that Ebola was real. They thought the government was making it up to get money, and they looted an Ebola holding center and took the suspected patients out and back into the communities, along with mattresses and other contaminated materials. So after that, they were quarantined, and they weren't given any information. So that just fueled more mistrust, and the people didn't know what was happening. So Katie went in and started talking to people, trying to talk about Ebola prevention and that it was real, and asking what was being done and what wasn't being done and what the needs were. And what she found out was that there were a lot of gaps in the response, and people were doing, like 2 organizations were doing the same thing, and then no one was doing another thing. So she started organizing meetings with the community leaders, and we started this Ebola-Free West Point Coalition with all of the local leaders in the community. Katie's been working there for over 9 years now, so she has really strong relationships with everyone there. And we were able to fill the gaps with the resources needed quicker than anyone else. So this is, don't need to go over this, but this is just organization, their roles, and like the contacts and who we were meeting with. And we mapped out this coalition. So for example, we were evolving and responding to the community as we saw the needs. So the awareness team would go out every day, and we mapped out West Point and split it into 7 zones, which that in itself was a feat because nobody had mapped out the slum before, and to make sure that every single person was being seen every day to see if they had any symptoms and could be a suspect. We added nurses to the team so that people could see, so that they could triage whether or not they were actually an Ebola suspected patient or if they had a cold or something, and then they could be treated at home rather than further overwhelming the system. We also, down here for Ebola patients, we would give them phones because we realized that patients were going into the treatment unit and then their families were never able to contact them, didn't know whether they were alive or not unless they didn't come back one day or they did come back, and that was not okay. We also bought our own ambulance because no ambulances were taking 3 to 4 days to pick up people, and we shortened that time to 30 minutes with our ambulance. And a lot of our students' dads ended up being the ambulance attendees, and they were trained by MSF and Samaritan's Purse and had proper training and gear and all of that. So we also saw the need of helping with Ebola orphans situation. So this is a little girl, Perlina, whose mom died in the ambulance on the way to the Ebola treatment center. And she was not showing symptoms, but she didn't have anywhere to go. So we took her and quarantined her until we could reconnect her with her extended family, with her dad, who we didn't know was alive at the time, but figured out, and transferred her back to that. And she's actually now in our school, but I'll get to that later. So those were kind of the needs and what we saw during Ebola. And then Katie was chronicling this with Instagram the whole time, and I wanted to show you guys this quick video.
The Ebola outbreak has taken everything in me, but it's given me more passion for life than ever before. My name is Katie Myler. I'm the founder and CEO of More Than Meat. I'm coming to you from Monrovia, Liberia. I came here to get girls from the West Point slum off the street and into school. But all that has changed once Ebola struck. I've been documenting my journey on Instagram. I'll never forget this moment for the rest of my life. Perlina arrived at the hospital after watching her mom die right in front of her in the ambulance. She was showing no symptoms of Ebola. But the community and extended family members didn't want her because they were afraid that she'd start showing symptoms too. She had nowhere to go. She's 3 years old. Luckily, Perlina tested negative for Ebola twice and has been reunited with her father and grandmother. My neighbors, the Yuri family, all have Ebola, except for Miata, Didi's daughter. She's only 6 years old. Her dad and baby sister have died. Her mother and 4 other siblings all had the symptoms. If Miata went to the hospital with her 4 other siblings and her mom, then she would likely start to show the symptoms too and contract Ebola. But where else was she supposed to go? Everyone else was afraid of her. The good news is she wasn't alone for long. Miata and her mom and siblings survived Ebola. The doctors told me they are one of the few families where everyone who's come in together also went out together. This is Charlie. He's 8. He was alone, dying outside on the dirt. He was too weak to talk. I left to buy him a blanket, toys, and juice. and with the very little energy he had, he managed to look me dead into my eyes and say, "God will bless you." I learned that Charlie passed away. The healthcare system is overwhelmed, and he got Ebola at a time where there was no open beds for treatment. Every time I get sick, have a headache, and once I've even thrown up, I immediately think, crap, I have Ebola. It's pretty scary, I won't lie. I've been tested twice by Doctors Without Borders, and no, I don't have Ebola, thank God. Anyone who is experiencing the Ebola outbreak on the front lines will never be the same person again. When I returned to Liberia, people were surprised to see me, a white woman from the US, by herself back in Liberia. But they were also extremely grateful that I wanted to help. We need change now. With love, from Liberia, Katie.
Sorry. So that was kind of intense. But Katie was telling stories like this on Instagram, and it was helping to spread the word and get things done, and that's how we were able to respond so fast, because people were seeing those stories and seeing the need, and we had some individual donors that were able to send money immediately, and with no red tape or bureaucracy, and we were able to start the community coalition in West Point, and we actually partnered with Ministry of Health and expanded that initiative into 5 other communities around Monrovia, training the local awareness workers, the local heroes who are doing all the work to have that system in place. So through all of those efforts, both our nurse Iris and Katie were recognized in the Time Person of the Year issue as Ebola fighters. And since then, that was in December, and since then our Ebola efforts have continued. Luckily, it's gone way down. We're wrapping up our Ebola efforts right now, and we've reopened the school on March 2nd, which is really exciting. And we added 30 new students who were orphaned or abandoned by Ebola. They're back in school, back to normal. They were out of school for 7-8 months, so they are behind, but we're gonna go year round and catch them up. But what we realized during Ebola is that what happened was not okay. It was unacceptable. The world took too long to respond. There's so many issues in Liberia that caused Ebola to be as bad as it was, and those are systemic issues that are still issues now. So there's no healthcare infrastructure. There's not an educated population that was able to defend themselves in this situation. And we feel that nothing is going to change without that educated population, and that it starts with education. So we know we can and must do more, and what we've learned from Ebola is that it takes a community response, and we want to use that to rebuild the education infrastructure in Liberia. So this is Perlina. She's in school now, the same girl that was in the ambulance. And one of the biggest issues in Liberia is that there are no trained teachers, very few trained teachers, and so we are now looking at adding a technology component to our school and testing some interventions. So I'd love MIT's help and suggestions and any ideas you guys have, but we really want to try to implement a technology so that the Liberian teachers, who are great facilitators and disciplinarians and have good skills, have them be the facilitators rather than leading the skills part of the education. So looking at something like a video lesson where there's an experienced teacher who works closely with the Liberian teacher with trainings each week so that the Liberian teacher can facilitate in the classroom activity while there's an experienced teacher on the video. That's one idea we have. So right now we're in the research stages of that, and we're looking at what's being done in other places and really want to find something that works in Liberia and that's tailored to Liberia, because we really feel like we can make a difference. There's only 4 million